Hi, welcome back to Chapter 2 of our recording of the Non-Conformist Club. My name's Drew Richardson, and I wrote this story. If you are new to this, it'd probably be best for you to go back to Chapter 1. Check the links over there, they should be there. And go back to Chapter 1 and look at the first link again. But if you're ready to get started with Chapter 2, let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 2, Roland. Come on, faggot, let's go for a swim. A vice grip clenched the back of my neck and shoulder, and another powerful hand seized my arm, shoving me through the heavy bathroom door head first. I started with escape plan 1. It doesn't work much anymore, but it's always worth a shot and rarely does me any harm. You know who my brother is, right? Yeah, Adam. So what? He grunted. Crap. Either he knows my brother or he isn't scared of him. Either way, bad news for me. As we passed the sinks, I looked at my assailant in the mirrors. Jack something, wrestler, maybe. Try number 3. I flailed my arms side to side, twisting with all my might at the waist. This freed my arm so he only had the sleeve of my shirt. Got him now. He can have the shirt. I bent at the waist, backing up. This broke the hold on my neck, so all I had to do was slip out of the shirt and I'd be home free. But then, he let go of my shirt and grabbed my now exposed belt. Oh, shit. He's quick. He can't have my pants. I braced myself against the stall opening, which bought me, literally, a second to check the pot. If I could have held on a bit longer, I could have used 4 or 9, but I wasn't strong enough. Okay, pot's clean. I guess it's time for number 6. I planted my foot in the toilet, soaking my leg, which sucked, but the water was clean, and at least it wasn't my head. Even with my puny legs, he couldn't really budge me from this position. He still got the joy of dunking me, which should be enough to satisfy him for a while. He pushed on my head a few more times, but even he knew I wasn't going anywhere. Game over. The minute bell rang. Next time I'll have a turd waiting for you, fag, he snarled. I didn't reply, so he left. I got to class after the bell, but before the voice on the intercom blasted, "Good morning, East. Please rise for the pledge," I slipped into my place and began to recite. Mrs. Martin looked at my leg, then at me, concerned. I appreciated that she didn't call any more attention to it than necessary. Her eyes asked, "Are you okay?" I shrugged and waved her off. She'd seen me in worse shape, so she just nodded and went to her computer to take attendance. As inconspicuously as I could, I slipped off my shoe and stuffed it with paper. I put my sock across the top. It wouldn't be dry by the end of the hour, only damp, but I could stuff it in my pocket. Jim Newman and Dale Porter across the aisle looked at me with disgust. When Miss Martin began, "Okay, open to page 292, they started in on me. "Hey, bitch, what'd you do, fall in the toilet?" sneered Dale. "He was taking a dump and fell in," Jim cackled. I didn't reply, just opened my book and looked away. Maybe she didn't notice me coming in. I glanced over at Elena Martinez. Her stunning green eyes looked at me, sad, pitiful. Excellent. I turned back to my book. I construct an elaborate fantasy where she touches my arm and tells me how sorry she is. I look deep into her eyes, and she begins to bite her bottom lip in that way she does when she's taking notes off the overhead. I say all the right things, have all the right words. She smiles at me, closes her eyes, and puts her head on my shoulder. I can even smell her shampoo. Isn't that pathetic? I can't even get laid in my dreams. Mrs. Martin snapped me back to reality, literally snapping her fingers in my face. Fortunately, I wasn't staring at Elena, but at my textbook. She smiled kindly. "Your essay?" I reached into my binder and pulled out 2 typed pages on irony in the most dangerous game. She said, "Typed even?" I just shrugged. "Well, I'm looking forward to reading this." I shrugged again without making eye contact. Off to second period, math with Mr. Adams. This class is pretty easy on me since it's honors level and just right across the hall from my English class. Most of the dangerous, stupid kids are in other rooms. A kid named Rodney flicked my ear before he asked to borrow a pencil, but he said thanks after I gave it to him. At least he's polite. I wordlessly offered a stick of gum to Tamara and Angel, the 2 goth girls who sit on my left. Their black fingernails take the sticks, pull the foil off, and bend the gum past their black lipstick. Woohoo! Human contact! Go me! Unfortunately, I made a tactical error and Rodney saw me, so that cost me an extra piece. I was dried out by the time the period ended, and I headed to third hour. Lucy. Just thinking her name made me drop my guard a little in the hallway. I missed Aaron Magruder until he rammed his shoulder into mine, spinning me around 90 degrees. Fortunately, I had just transferred my books into the other hand, so I didn't have to pick up a mess. Another tactical error. What's wrong with me today? Get in the game, kid. You don't want to end up stuffed in a locker again. I saw Jack What's-His-Name from this morning, was able to turn my face to the lockers and blend in enough that he didn't see me. Okay, sore shoulder, everything else is intact. Get with it. Lucy, remember, Lucy. I slid into class just as the final bell rang. Just in time, Mr. McCullsburg, said Mr. Anson, my enormous slug of a biology teacher. Everyone called him Mr. Bubbles due to the 350 pounds he was carrying around and his tendency to spit when he spoke. No one ever learned anything. They were always too busy dodging loogies. Hey, Roland, Lucy said as I took my place next to her at the lab table. Just made it, huh? I shrugged and tried to smile at her. Yeah. My face was already burning red hot. Whoa, 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 big boy, don't say so much. You might bust a seam. She was smiling at me. Holy crap, she's smiling at me. Say something funny. Be clever, you dipstick. Okay, I reply. Hey, she's laughing. She's actually laughing. Say something else. Hey, Lucy, going to the party of dogs this weekend? Gonna be 3 kegs, I hear. Yelled Marcus Goring from across the lab. I suppose. Unless you got another offer for me. She didn't even turn to look at him. She just started pouring water into her beaker. I can think of one, he said, grabbing at his crotch. Sorry, I was talking about dinner, not a light snack, she said, not turning around. I guess she knew Marcus well enough. Several people in the class oohed. No, baby, I'm a 3-course meal. More like a 3-inch weenie. Well, you would know. Well, boys will talk. What happens in the locker room doesn't always stay in the locker room, you know. By now, the whole class was oohing. A few people were laughing and pointing fingers. Marcus knew he was beat. He was laughing, too. So, you going or not? She finished measuring into her beaker, stood up, faced him for the first time, and said, Of course, sweetie. I'll see you there. And blew him a kiss. My imaginary love affair with Lucy was easier to picture than the one with Elena. Lucy was so smart and funny and cool and nice. Surely she'd be able to see. So, you ready to learn about the wonders of osmosis? She said to me with a triumphant grin on her face. Sure am, I replied. It was the longest sentence I'd ever spoken to her. Talk about a tactical error. I was totally off my game when I got out in the hall after biology. I was soaring. I said goodbye to Lucy after the bell rang, and she said it back. So my head wasn't where it was supposed to be. Especially during the 3rd, 4th passing period, the danger minutes. All the idiots, jocks, and criminals were roaming the halls. The late arrivers had come into school, and the early leavers hadn't given up for the day yet. Plus, it was a long haul from Bubbles' room down to my locker, and then all the way back to the locker room for Jim. Unfortunately, talking to Lucy had me off my A game, and I broke routine. I hit the usual zigzag down the back math hallway, avoiding Josh, the tailbag, coming out of chem. However, I missed John Benson coming out of the bathroom, trailing cigarette smoke. He shoved me into the lockers, bashing my already sore shoulder. This made my arm go slightly numb, so I started to drop the binder I had in that arm. I didn't want to lose my homework, so I dropped my book and caught the binder in the other arm. Once the book hit the floor, a sadistic streak came out in people who were ordinarily no trouble. Matt Ford kicked it, sending it skittering down the hall under the foot of Susie McCullers. She said, Ugh, nerd book, and kicked it down the stairwell, where I finally caught up to it. This put me a little behind getting downstairs, so I wasn't changed in the gym by the time most of the other boys got to the locker room as I would have preferred. The locker room's a very dangerous place for me. Coach Hubbard isn't exactly sensitive about bullying. John Benson saw me first. Hey, Roland shit, you didn't even dent the locker earlier. I guess I'll have to try harder next time. If you tried harder in remedial math, you could have graduated before you could buy beer. Robert D'Angelo was next to him. Yeah, McQueersburg. We don't let girls change in this locker room. Apparently your sex change doesn't disqualify you, Robbie. Again, I didn't say anything. I just finished tying my shoes and got out of there as fast as I could. I made it to French without incident. It's not always an easy walk, because this is where I often see my brother, Adam. He must have been skipping today or was walking in his new girlfriend to class. French was my least favorite subject, but it did have my favorite teacher, Miss Peterson. She smiled as I walked in. Bonjour, Marcel. Comment allez-vous? Comme ci, comme ça. Did you like Jurassic Park? Uh-huh. Didn't I just suggest that last week? Yeah, read the other too. Jurassic Park and the Andromeda Strain in a week? She asked. I nodded. Wow, you're going to run through my recommendations before first semester's over. You've read the Da Vinci Code? Uh-huh. Ender's Game? Yep. How about An Abundance of Catherines? By who? John Green. The nerd fighter guy? I don't know what that is, but he's a writer for sure. I write the name down. Thanks. My pleasure, Marcel. I didn't like French class, but needed it for college, so I took it. At least the class is 85% girls, and there weren't any idiots or jocks to bother me. Lucy was in there too, but so were a couple of her friends, so she didn't have any reason to acknowledge me. Miss Pete learned early not to call on me to speak out loud, which I really appreciated. I just sat in the back and read one of her other recommendations, Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I waited in Pete's room until the hallways cleared for lunch. Then I went to my locker, grabbed my lunch, and headed to the library. There were benches by the door where I sat and ate, then went inside to read. The library was across from the social studies wing, so I brought my textbook along and went straight to world geography with Mr. Jancock. They call him Squeaky because he's small and kind of mouse-like. My only problem in that class, Luis Rodriguez, was absent, so class went smoothly. Elena sat right in front of me thanks to the wonders of alphabetical seating. She tried to cultivate this look where it seemed like she just hopped out of bed and came to school. Sitting behind her, I could tell her hair was full of products, though. And when she needed to dye her roots, I could tell that too. It was a little crunchy to the touch, I'd noticed as I brushed against it reaching for a pencil. She usually smelled faintly of watermelon, but sometimes wore some other kind of perfume. She dressed casually, t-shirts and ripped jeans, not too revealing, but showing enough skin to accentuate the body she had underneath. I spent way more time contemplating that than the various African coastlines I was supposed to be memorizing. She was writing a note, and normally I don't snoot, but Squeaky was so boring I couldn't help but peek at what she was writing. I'd cross the great divide, I'd sail across the sea, I'd climb the highest mountain for you to be with me. Not exactly stunning verse, but I was surprised and impressed that she wrote poetry at all. I figured it was a stupid note to her boyfriend. You do not see the me inside that's crying to get out. I set and spike and clap and cheer, but inside I just want to kick things and scream and headbang and quit school and throw away my volleyball and my student council button and palms and give up. Sometimes. Interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that someone like her would have those kinds of issues. At least sometimes. 7th hour brought my favorite class of the day, band. I was a terrible musician, 4th chair tenor sax, but I loved the band room and the atmosphere of the place. Mr. Ovitz, the little Mexican band director, was the best teacher in the school. Some of the preps and jocks played instruments, as did brains, goths, hicks, and other subgroups of students. Because you were assigned a chair based on ability, everybody was all mixed up. People who would never talk to each other in the real world ended up sharing a music stand. This created an unusual atmosphere, where everyone seemed to get along, and the leaders of the room were not the ones who were leaders in other parts of the school. When I came in, the noise was already picking up as people warmed up their instruments. As I went to the back of the room to grab my instrument from the cubbyhole, I had to step around the king of the band room and his courtiers. Dave Webster was a junior who played the trap set. He was always surrounded by a varying group of 10 to 15 people. They surrounded him, waiting to hear what he would say next. He was sitting on the floor drumming on his black army boots in an incessant rhythm and holding court, as he often did while he waited for class to start. My horn was nearby, so I eavesdropped while I put it together. Ask him, said a blonde 10th grader, poking her friend. The other girl, Darla, giggled. I can't. You ask him. Okay. Dave, why do you drum all the time? Dave smiled slyly. Sexually frustrated. It's either drum or I'll explode. Everyone laughed, but he didn't stop drumming. Anything else you want to know? A skinny guy in a Slipknot t-shirt, they called him Tank, had his arm around a cute redhead with too much eye makeup. He said, Why are girls so complicated? Why does everything have to be a test? This got a few laughs and an elbow from the girl under his arm, but she didn't move away. Dave continued drumming. The problem is, we can't pass the test when we don't know the instructions. And as soon as we start to get a few answers, they change the questions again. Girls, you gotta help us out. Men are stupid, simple creatures. We have basic needs and desires. It's okay that you're more complicated, but throw us a bone every now and then. And I mean that as many ways as you want to take it. The punchline got a laugh, but the crowd was also nodding their head thoughtfully. A freshman flute player asked, "What do boys want in a girlfriend?" "To make them stop drumming," he smirked, winking at her. Men, on the other hand, are looking for something more. The 10th grader piped up again. "What are you looking for in a girlfriend?" Dave stopped drumming, pushed his mop of blonde hair from his face, and focused his blue eyes on her. She tried to meet his stare, but quickly looked down at the floor. He said, "What do you have to offer?" "Nothing." Bullshit. Even though there were around a dozen people listening, Dave focused in on the girl like she was the only person in the room. "Be honest with me for a minute. And yourself." He lightly touched her chin and brought her gaze to him. "I don't know. I get good grades. I'm pretty nice. I like my hair. You got a great smile, too." "Okay." She covered her mouth with her hand and blushed. "Okay, so you're nice and smart and pretty. Are you funny?" "I guess so. I like to laugh." "So you'd laugh if I told a joke?" "Well, yeah." "Then what more could I be looking for?" "I don't know." "So ask me," he almost whispered. She looked at the floor again and said, "Will you go out with me sometime?" "Nah, you're not my type," Dave replied, still holding her chin. Her jaw dropped just a little, and her eyes began to water. He held the joke just a beat longer, grinned widely, and said, I'm kidding. Of course we can go out sometime. How about after the football game? Not next Friday, but the Friday after that." "Sure," she replied. "Cool," he said, mirroring her smile. "This may sound terrible, but I don't know your name." "Jasmine." "Beautiful name, Jasmine. I'm looking forward to it." Just then the minute bell rang and everyone got up to get their instruments ready. Tank disengaged from Eyeshadow Girl and was having an intense discussion with Dave as they walked away. I thought I saw them point at me, but probably not. After band was over, it was a simple thing to wait in the room for 10 minutes or so to allow the calls to clear. Then I went to my locker, grabbed my homework, and walked home. It would have been quicker to take the bus, of course, but that certainly wasn't safe. So I walked the 2.5 miles. It was good exercise, and I learned to read a book while I walked, so it wasn't so bad. And that's the end of Chapter 2. I hope you liked our introduction to Roland and maybe seeing Dave from a little different angle, trying to build this world from 2 different points of view and 2 different perspectives. I hope you liked it enough to stick around. I'll be posting Chapter 3 within the next few days or so, I'm sure. I don't know if I want to spread them out or if I want to do them all at once, post it all at once. I'm still kind of trying to decide that. Feel free to let me know in the comments. That'd be wonderful. I'd love to get some comments, get some feedback, hear what you guys think, what you guys like, what you didn't like. It'd be really fun for me, of course, and hopefully for some of you too, to maybe do a Q&A or something like that with the story and talk about what's going on with the story and things like that. I'd love to talk about it more with you. So either leave some comments down below in the comment section, or you can find more of my writing on my website, myculturalobsessions.com. There's also audio versions. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I'm taping a podcast version of this as well that will be available on the website. So feel free to find me there, and I hope I see you again for Chapter 3. Thanks a lot.